This is Peter,
And this is Tom.
and you're listening to History Teachers Talking Podcasts. All right, this is Peter Zablocki and Thomas Reska, and welcome back to the show. I guess today we're talking about Captain America, and not that Captain America, different Captain America.
We are talking about probably one of, if not the greatest athlete of all time. And that is a man by the name of Jim Thorpe.
Yes, most definitely, undisputably, probably the greatest athlete, American athlete of all time. He ranks up there in every single ranking that I read doing this research. He ranks up there with Babe Ruth and Michael Jordan
Oh,
for the
Muhammad
greatest
Ali,
athlete.
Phelps, Jim
Yeah,
Brown. Yeah, they're all great at their individual sports. But if you want to look at like overall pure athleticism and impressive records, then it has to be Jim Thorpe. Just
Jim Thorpe.
the diversity of what the sports he was good at. He was good at
Exactly.
everything.
I mean, I guess we should bring it up real quick before we kind of get into the show today. I mean, Jim Thorpe was a professional athlete, but I mean, talking like you mentioned, right? He was a gold medalist, multiple gold medals in the Olympics for track and field. He was a professional football player and one of the founding members of the NFL. He was a professional baseball player and played for Major League Baseball. He also played professional basketball. Yeah, gold medals in track, professional football, baseball, and basketball. I mean, you have your Bo Jacksons and stuff, but like not to this extent. I mean, this guy's
He's a two-time
crazy.
All-American. Yeah, there's a list of any athletes, like you said before, greatest athletes in their sport. He's always on the list.
You know, he only made it to the Wheaties box in 2001. That was like a big deal. People were like, "Why did it take so long for
Well,
arguably the greatest athlete?" And I think we'll talk about that
I
today.
think we'll get into that, and we'll get into how he was. If he was alive today, it'd be very different,
Yeah,
obviously. But he wasn't. The one reason is because he was Native American. That heritage, that background, really
yeah.
hindered him as far as like becoming the national icon. But people loved him regardless, even with that little scandal that we'll get to, which really wasn't a scandal.
No,
Um,
not
it
by any
really
means.
just it was really just Thorpe being honest.
Yeah.
Basically, is what's hurt him there.
That's kind of what's sad, yeah, when I was reading this. So let's kind of get into it. So the
Yeah,
plan for today is as follows. We'll talk about Jim Thorpe, the man, from his childhood, kind of how he started, and then we'll kind of get into his career of in multiple sports and discuss that, and we'll finish up with some of his legacy. And it's kind of sad because I think that a lot of people don't know about Jim Thorpe. So hopefully we could change some of that today. So Jim Thorpe was, this is kind of disputed. He was born in, again, disputed because it's funny. He said he was born one year, and then evidence points that he was born another year. But regardless, let's settle on May 1887,
seven.
right?
Yeah.
And he was born in Indian Territory, which technically wasn't even a state yet. So essentially, he was born in Oklahoma, but before Oklahoma was Oklahoma, right? It was still designated on U.S. maps in 1880s as Indian Territory. His birth name, Tom.
Wa Tau Hok, which
Yep.
means birth path. And he was basically following his father's tribal lineage, and he was a member of the Sauk and Fox tribe.
Yep.
He also had French and Irish roots, so he's basically a example of an American, right? Because he's
Hmm.
that melting pot. He's a whole bunch of things thrown in together,
Yep.
and he
And I
spent.
think both his mom and dad were half Native American
Yeah,
and
yeah.
half white, right?
Yeah, and he lived on a farm with his twin brother Charlie. And what they used to do, their father, who was a bootlegger and a horse breeder, and that was really important because that taught him how to hunt and break horses. That was like what he would do. He would go and capture horses and break them, not break them, but like domesticate them. And
Yeah.
as he got older, this is crazy when I read about this. He was so fast that he was able to chase down horses, runaway horses on foot. He could actually keep up with horses. That's how fast
Yeah.
this guy was.
I mean, I'm pretty sure, and we'll get to this later. I think his mile was like 4 minutes
Yeah, he was
in
one
the
of
Olympics.
something like that. He was really fast because as a boy he would apparently like sit for hours just watching the horses run, and that's how he would watch the mechanics. He would figure out like how their stride, how their trot goes, and then he was basically able to like mimic that himself. And that's one reason why he was so fast. He said just because he would spend hours every day just watching horses, and he did a lot of
Hmm.
like horse competitions and games with his father and stuff like that. That's what they would do. They would engage in these horse competitions where they would basically like tricks with the horses.
Yep. His brother, actually, in case anyone's wondering what happened to his twin brother and whether he was just as skilled, athletic as Jim, his brother actually passed away very young. I think they
A,
were like,
a lot of his family passed away young.
yeah, I think it was 9. His brother Charlie when passed away. So again, these guys are living, like I said, Salk and Fox tribe. They more or less live in this this weird time where the United States policies towards Native Americans has started leaning towards assimilation. And the United States government tried everything it could, at least at that point, before it kind of gave up, to assimilate Native Americans and to kind of distribute property and more or less like make them not necessarily remain on their reservations, but kind of become American farmers per se, for better or for worse. That obviously backfired later on. It could be a podcast in itself, but Jim is sent to boarding school, right? For Native Americans. It's about 20 miles away from his home. And the school is designed basically, again, it's designated for Native American children. And ages in that school range from like 6 to college. Like it's imagine like one college, like school campus for all these Native American children from the ages of 6 to like 20, right?
And Thorpe, he hated school. He was
Yep.
not fond of it. He liked being outdoors, and he used to run away from the school a lot. It was a 20 miles, like he said, from his house, and he would just run back home. He had no
Yep.
problem doing that 20 miles. He'd run back home, and then his father would catch him and be like, "All right, we got to go back," because his father wanted him to be educated. He said, "Listen, you got to be
Yeah.
educated," and he would do this a lot. He would just run home. Like, think how many kids like wouldn't 20 miles. Like, no,
20
I'm not.
miles.
I'm
Yeah.
not going.
Yeah.
He would just be like, "I'm fine. I'm running home," and that's what he would do. He would
Which
just
is
do that.
crazy. So after he kind of so his father passes away when Jim's like around 17 years old, and he enrolls in an Indian industrial school in Pennsylvania, right? Where's it?
Carlisle
Carless.
Indian Industrial School in Pennsylvania.
That's what it was, right?
Yeah, he's going to be an
Yep.
electrician. That was his
Electrician. Yeah, he trained to be an electrician. And this is kind of where the story of Jim Thorpe starts off,
this one.
right?
Yeah.
So um, he's about 17 years old, more or less, maybe 18 at this time. And he's walking by the track and field team, right? And they're practicing the high jump. And Jim is kind of, again, he's dressed in overalls, I'm pretty sure they said. He wasn't
He was
necessarily,
wearing work clothes. Yeah, and he asked if he
yeah,
could. He's like, "Can I give it a try?" And he was. They said he had a leg build, but he was short. He's only about 5'8",
yep.
and
Hey,
they
I'm
didn't
five
think.
nine. What are you
Well,
trying to say, bro?
right, and you would not be able to do the high jump. Sorry.
No.
If you see the high jump, anyway,
I can't even get up in the morning with my old knees. Who are you kidding? High
the
jump. What?
the track and field team look at him. They're kind of laughing. Right, they don't think he'll be able to do it, and so they raised the bar to the top, like
Yep.
5'9", which was
That was the school record.
higher than the
Yep.
school record. And then Thorpe makes the jump on his very first try, and so all of them are just like, "What?" So again, it's almost out of like a movie. He's this guy just walking. He's like, "Oh, can I try?" They're like, "Yeah. Well, you can try." And they make it higher. And in the first try, never doing it before in his life, he just jumps
Yep.
over it.
So the next morning, right, the football coach of the school and the track coach, Glenn Pop Warner, summons Thorpe right to his office, and Thorpe is like freaked out, like, "Oh crap, I got in trouble." He's a teenager, and he says, "Have I done anything wrong?" And the coach says, "Son, you've only broken a school record in a high jump. That's all." And that kind of starts Thorpe as an athlete, right?
Yeah, and when he goes on, he becomes the star of the track team, the baseball
Yeah,
team, the hockey team, the basketball team, the lacrosse team,
lacrosse.
and he
Yep.
was also known as a very good ballroom dancer. And also football. He really makes a mark in football into that too. Also, I just named like every sport. He wasn't on
Go
the
ahead.
team. He was the star of the team.
Yep, in every single one of those sports.
Yeah,
And
very good one.
they said that he actually won like a state sectional for that school track team by winning every event. They said that he won that sectional. Like it's not like his team won. He competed in every event on that track team and won every one of them. It's like, what? This is insane.
Well, then he played 2 years under Pop Warner. Everyone knows like Pop Warner leagues. It's that guy that really influential in bringing, really making American football what it is. But he played 2 years for football, and he played halfback. He was a place kicker. He was a punter and a defender.
This
And
is college, right?
this is
This is
college, yeah.
college.
And when he was there, his team only lost 2 games.
Yep.
In both seasons, he was named an All American. And the big thing about that is that back then, the NCAA, which is only a few years old, they didn't really keep track of stats the way that they do today. So, because of that, some of his statistics were found printed in newspaper much later on. And they had him rushing for, in 1912, over 1,800 yards. But the final two games were missing. In those final two games, they think he probably easily crossed a 200-yard barrier, and that would make him the first ever 2,000-yard rusher in football. But there's no proof of it. And
Yeah.
so the first official rusher that rushed 2,000 yards was someone well known, but for different reasons. Well, later on in his life, different reasons, and that was
OJ,
O.J.
right?
Simpson. O.J.
Yeah, that's
Simpson.
what I thought.
So
Yeah.
O.J. Simpson achieved the goal in 1973. That was 61 years after Jim Thorpe. Jim Thorpe probably did it. So it's another
Crazy.
example that we'll get to a lot in the podcast. This guy did so many amazing things on the athletic field, and he just didn't get credit for it
Yep.
until after the fact.
Yeah, I mean, and even in the news, he was often referred to as, the red man tries
Yeah,
this, the red man does that.
which is
Um,
crazy when you think about it like that. That's how they're referring to him as.
yeah. Well, you know what's interesting is he's doing all these things, right? I mean, the Olympics that he goes in, right, is 1912. That's when he starts qualifying for the Olympics, which we'll get to in a second. But Native Americans were not necessarily all considered American yet by
Yeah,
19. It wasn't until 1924, I think, when the United States officially recognized all Native American tribes and nations as American citizens. So a lot of people back then consider him like when he did make the Olympic team for the United States. They're like, well, is he really American? Which is insane. This guy is a Native American. Like he is the American. And the world was like, well, is he really American? Is this red man really American? That's what they refer to him as, which is
yeah,
crazy. So the reason he even tries out and winds up, right? So he's playing college football, like you said, he's racking up all these accolades. This guy's ridiculous. And the college is still the same school, right? He's still at Carla. I
yeah.
can't.
So he wants to be a professional athlete, which at the time was not very common. Nowadays, you hear kids say, "Oh, I want to be a professional athlete," and again, they're focusing on one sport, right? I'm trying to get this
Yeah,
lacrosse scholarship. I'm trying to get this basketball scholarship, whatever that may be. He was just like, "I'm just going to be a professional athlete," and we had a girlfriend at the time, and he
yeah.
wanted to
That's the
marry
funny
her.
story.
And the
Yeah.
family's like, "There's no, you're not marrying her because there's no way you're going to make money." So he's like, "Well, I'm going to prove to you I can make money by doing this. I am a good athlete, so I'm going to go try out for the Olympic team."
Yeah, he just walked on to try the
Just
Olympic
walked out
team
there.
too.
He's like, I'm going to try out 1912 Olympic team, and he easily makes it. They're like, "Yeah, you're on the team." That's not.
Yeah, but this is the funny part about it. So he tries out his Olympic team to basically, like you said, impress his girlfriend and her parents. That's all. Like, there's no other reason. And he shows up to these trials, and he's never thrown javelin before, right? And we're talking, we're talking. These are the best of the best athletes in the
People
United States.
who have trained for this for
Yeah, like
years.
for years to try to
And
make this team.
Thorpe just shows up. He's like, "All right, let me try this."
Yeah, so they give him this javelin, right? And no one tells him. Again, this is kind of the whole racist part going on with him being Native American, but no one tells him that you get a running start with a javelin. They
Yeah,
just like hand it to him, and they're laughing. Ha ha! Yeah, go ahead. And so he takes this javelin, and he's like, "What do I got to do? Just throw it?" And they're like, "Yeah." So he throws it without any running start and takes second place out of the best javelin throwers in the nation. Right, second place without first time he's doing it, right?
with no running
Without
start.
any running start whatsoever. So he literally, and besides that, for when he was trying out, he did a 100-meter dash, 200-meter mile, hurdles. I mean, he rocked it. And as you said, they're like, all right, like you're on the
Well, some
team,
of the
bro.
times here, I found some of his times. These were not. I don't think these were necessarily his best times. These are just some of the ones that they were talked about.
Hmm.
Basically, he could run the 100-yard dash in 10 seconds flat, the
Yeah.
220-yard dash in 21.8 seconds. Um, he could run the mile in 4 minutes 35 seconds.
Yeah. So it was like
He could
4 miles. I mean,
he could do
4 minutes.
the 120-yard high hurdles in 15 seconds. He could long jump 23 feet 6 inches. He could high jump 6 feet 5 inches, pole vault 11 feet, shot put 47 feet, throw the javelin 163 feet, and throw the discus 136 feet. This is all just like showing up.
Yeah. And we should also mention the fact that that wasn't even his like number one sport. He was a football player.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. This is just what he's like. All
what?
right, he's like, I can do this. Let me
Yeah,
just.
I'll impress my girlfriend.
So yeah,
It's just
this is what I have to
insane.
do for the Olympics. I have to do the decathlon, the pentathlon. Fine, I'll do it. So
Insane. Actually, no, it's funny. Talk about trying to press your girlfriend. I joined the high school wrestling team to try to impress a girl in high school.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, did that
That,
not work out for
how
me?
long did you stay down in high school for?
Well, long enough, I guess, to I mean, I did survive, and I won 2 scrimmages, and I got a free T-shirt, and then she decided to say yes to going on a date with me, and then I quit. But I'm married to her today, so all is well.
So that,
It all worked out.
that's how it worked
I
out.
guess that worked out.
Trying to show you're a jock.
Yeah, but practice was rough, man. I mean, it hurt. So God bless all those wrestlers.
Yes, yes.
So anyway, so I kind of, I mean, I'm not trying to put myself in the same
Yeah, I'm
league
just saying you're trying to compare.
As
You're
Jim
trying to
Thorpe right here.
so it's Jim Thorpe and Pete Zablocki, right? That's like the 1 and 2, more or
Yeah,
less.
yeah, of course, yeah. So, obviously,
Interesting.
I'm not trying to do
Interesting.
that. But yeah, so I mean, and a lot of these records you just mentioned, they were actually held at the Olympics as records for years.
Until they, we'll
Um,
get to it, until they overturned a lot of his records, the
yep.
Olympic Committee.
But
But
even
that
like when you look at
changes, yeah.
unofficially the records themselves, I mean, no one ran faster like his mile until 1960. He did this in 1912.
Yeah.
Like it's
Well, he
insane.
competed in 15 individual events at the 1912 Olympics, and he won 8 of them,
Yep.
and he placed in the top 4 in all 10 events. So he
Yes.
was like right there for all of them. And he his record of, I guess, all the points of 8,413 points would stand for nearly 2 decades.
Yep.
Um, the
9 Olympic gold medals on a dude that this wasn't. None of these were his sport.
and
He was just like
he didn't, yeah,
crazy
he
athletic.
showed up. Yeah, he didn't even train for a lot of these. Um,
Yeah.
Probably one of the most impressive things that happened. I'm sure you heard this story about when someone stole his shoes at the Olympics.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Go
Right.
ahead. That's a great story.
So he goes. He's getting ready to go and compete in these events. Um, and he found out that someone stole his shoes. He was just right before he was getting ready to go compete because he walked around barefoot a lot. That's what he liked to do. So he
Yeah.
found a pair in the garbage, mismatched pair. They were 2 different sizes from a trash can. One of them was too big, so he put on a couple extra pairs of socks to make sure it fit better.
By the
And
way,
he
there's
went
a
out.
picture of this. You could Google this. There's a
Yeah,
picture of them
he
doing it.
went out and he won the gold medal.
Yes, with two different pairs of shoes on,
Yeah,
um,
from the
different
garbage.
sizes from the garbage.
From the garbage. So I was accustomed to
They
date.
said someone stole it. They actually said someone stole them
Yeah.
out of like jealousy and to try to be, be racist, I guess, or prejudice against them. That's one of the stories.
Well, what happened back then is all the medals were given to the athletes during the closing ceremonies of the games. That's different from
Hmm.
now. Like after the event is over, you get them and stuff like that. So Thorpe received. He would also receive these challenge prizes that were donated by King Gustav of Sweden and also Tsar Nicholas II of Russia, which
Yeah.
whole other podcast on him for the
Yeah.
decathlon. And apparently, what happened was Thorpe got it from King Gustav. Said, "You sir are the greatest athlete in the world." And then Thorpe's reply was, "Just thanks, King." So he was very like humble type of guy and very just like
Yeah.
down to the earth type of person. He didn't think of himself as what he really was, being this amazing athlete.
Yeah. So he comes back. By the way, he gets the girl. FYI, one of three because he winds up divorcing her. Events. She actually divorces him because she says that he is so busy and never home, and she divorces him later on. But he comes home to like a ticker tape parade on Broadway. I mean,
He was popular, yeah.
he was. I mean, again, 9 gold medals. It's insane, right? All around champion, right? At the Olympic Games. By the way, these were the Olympic Games in Sweden in September of 1912. FYI. He comes back, and then you want to get to the controversy?
Well, basically, what the controversy is, there was a lot of strict rules back then about amateurs. If you're in the Olympics, you're an amateur. That's the whole idea, right? You're not
Yep.
a pro athlete. This is different. If these were the rules, you would never have the dream team for like '92. That would be a cool
Yes.
podcast too, by the way, people.
Yeah. We should do
Um,
that. Okay.
at
Go.
some point, yeah, because we're sport guys now. No, anyway,
Yeah. Right.
um, it was basically you couldn't receive money or any type what you were doing. You could basically how to be, you had a normal job and then you did this on the side. It was to protect against professionals coming in and taking over the Olympics. So what they found out was that in late January 1913, there was a telegram. They published a story that before all of this, Thorpe played professional baseball in the East Carolina League for the Rocky Mount, North Carolina, in 1909, 1910.
When he was in college.
Yeah, and
Yep.
he did receive money. He received
So yeah,
two
so he
dollars.
didn't play professionally. That was the thing. Yeah, so he got basically what it said is he got paid. They said he was playing professionally, but essentially what it came down to is he got
Minor league.
paid to play.
He got paid to play, but he got paid $2,
Yes.
which a game, which came out to about $55 today.
Yeah.
And college players, in fact, regularly spent summers playing this, but most of them used aliases. So what they would do is they would just make up names and put that down so they could never be traced. Thorpe didn't
Yeah.
do that. No one told him. He didn't think to do that. And then when they asked him about it, it could be because just say you didn't do it and that's it. It's going to just fade away. But he comes out and actually admits, no, he's like, I played. And he even writes a letter to the AAU, the Amateur Athletic Union,
Yeah.
and its secretary, James Edward Sullivan. And James Edward Sullivan was basically just took this case really seriously and was like, no, if you received money, you are not an amateur. So therefore, you cannot have you were not in a Olympic committee. You're not Olympian. And then he was stripped of his titles, his medals, and because they declared him a professional.
And they took away his records, yeah,
Yeah,
that he held. And what we should also mention here is the fact that he did this. This was like a summer gig, so he played baseball in a summer for, like you said, like $2 as like a part time job. Like this wasn't a professional league. This was like,
yeah.
hey, I'm getting paid to play because I'm in college and I need money, kind of deal.
And it was money.
And
It was money.
yeah, and ultimately this kind of came to bite him in the butt.
Well, the positive thing, if there wasn't any positive thing for this, is that most people at home didn't really care.
Yep.
Like they were like, he's still Jim Thorpe, he's still this amazing athlete, and he's like, all right, if I'm a professional, fine, I'm professional. And then a lot of people, a lot of professional sport clubs started offering him contracts to
Yep,
come
and that's
play
when he becomes a professional
athlete.
football, baseball, and everything. Yeah. So I guess his dream comes true. And we should also kind of get to this. I guess we could get out of the way. He is eventually given these medals back. I mean, not the real medals; those actually have gone missing. Did you hear that? Did you read
Yeah,
about that?
yeah,
So they had him in a museum, his original medals from 1912, and then ever since they kind of went missing, and to this day, no one knows where they are. However, in early 80s, the Olympic Commission did restate his medals back to him, and they gave them to his children because he was dead by then. Um, and what's also kind of cool is that once they erased him from the Olympics for these 9 gold medals, and they took the second place people and made them champions, all of those people that were in second place flat out came out and said in the 20s and 30s, like, no, Jim Thorpe is the champion, not me. Like none of them accepted the fact
yeah.
that they were
The
moved up to
athletes all
first place.
respected. They're like,
Yeah.
this is just ridiculous. So yeah,
Yeah.
they all stood up for him.
So let's get into some of the stuff he actually did. After he came back from the Olympics.
Well, he becomes a baseball free agent first. He starts
Yes.
playing for the St. Louis Browns. He starts playing the National League, the New York Giants, the baseball New York Giants when they were
Hmm.
still there. I don't want to confuse you there, Peter. And
No, no, I knew that. I knew that. Hey, hey, hey.
Where do they play now?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, so never heard of the San Francisco Giants? No.
Are they really?
Yes, yeah.
See, I didn't know that.
The Dodgers used to play in Brooklyn, right? Yeah, yeah.
Well, that I know. That I know from the last podcast that
That's
you
why
and I did.
That's why the Met colors are orange and blue. The Dodgers and the Giants.
Really?
No,
See, you learn something new every day.
I think most people knew that, Peter. But yeah,
Okay,
okay.
okay, whatever, whatever,
Anyway,
whatever. All
I'm
right,
sorry.
baseball free agent, you
Good night,
jerk.
good night.
All right, all right.
So he also played for the White Sox, and he's not playing necessarily the entire season. He's playing like 19 games, 20 games here and there, just because he's doing other things. And people would come to see whenever they would announce ahead of time, "Hey, Jim Thorpe is going to play today. This day, Jim Thorpe is going to play." Then the gate receipts would actually, and the attendance would increase because people
Yep.
wanted to come. He met the Pope during this time. He met
Yeah, they did
he met King George.
they did like a world tour, right, with the Chicago White Sox, didn't
Yeah,
he?
yeah, all over the place. Yeah.
Yep.
And
Um,
he was basically like a celebrity that would also, and he could legitimately play. It wasn't like he just went up there like a ceremonial at bat or something like that. He could actually go in there and play. And there's actually a famous, it's called the double no hitter game between Fred Tony of the Reds and Hippo Vaughn of the Chicago Cubs. And basically both pitchers were pitching a no hitter and through the 9 innings. And Thorpe drove in the winning run in the 10th inning. That's how good he was. Like he knew what he was doing. He could go out there and play. The problem is he played very sporadically for baseball.
yeah, and just so you know, I know what you're talking about because my kid plays travel baseball, and I'm like kind of versed in what's going on now. So,
Okay, good.
just saying, just saying.
But you didn't know that there was a San Francisco Giants team.
Well, no, those just because I'm versed in the like rules of the game doesn't mean I follow every single team.
Okay, we're just going to. You can edit that part out and make yourself.
No, this is staying. I'm proud of it. Okay.
So he
Anyway,
basically played. He played for New York Giants, the baseball. He does play for New York Football Giants later on too. The Cincinnati Reds and the Boston Braves.
Yeah.
and the White Sox with that tour that he does.
Yeah. And then when he does, so he's doing all this in like the 1917, between like right after the Olympics. So 1912, 13, up to, I would say, 1919, I think, right? Although it says that he eventually, I think it was the Boston Braves in 1919. It was like his last Major League Baseball. But then he does play in minor leagues until 1922, just for some extra cash here and there. But meanwhile, while that's happening, that's where he also starts his professional football career. So he's actually playing for the precursor to the NFL, and eventually he does play for the NFL, while he's playing for Major League Baseball at the same time.
Yeah, he's doing both. He was that first multi sport professional athlete.
Signs with who does he sign with first? This is the American Professional Football Association, right? APFA.
For the NFL, yeah. So he
Yeah. So
signed with a team called
Bulldogs.
the Canton
Bulldog.
Bulldogs, yeah, and
Yes.
they win. He led them to championships in 1916, 17, and 19. He won the championship.
Yeah. And then this American Professional Football Association, the APFA, becomes the National Football League, which we know today as the NFL. 2 years into like its existence, and
And
actually Thorpe is nominated as the first president.
their first president
Um,
only served one season as their president, but
yeah,
technically Jim Thorpe, if that's kind of one of those Jeopardy Trivia Pursuit questions, who was the first president of the NFL,
yeah,
and it was Jim Thorpe, and it makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah. And then once it became the NFL, then he as even as president, he still continued playing. Right, he continued playing for the Bulldogs because they were one of the originals, one of the original 14 teams that formed the American Professional Football Association and eventually the NFL. And then after that, where did he play after that? I felt like he played in a couple teams in the NFL.
He did play for the Well, he played for the Bulldogs. He played for a team called the Orang Indians. He played, which also the Cleveland Indians. He played for the
Was it
Rock
an
Island.
that was like an old Native American team, right?
Yeah, he played for NFL. He plays with teams I saw the New York Giants and the Chicago Cardinals. Also,
Yeah.
a lot of the
Um,
teams shift and change over time, but these are the ones he played for.
yeah. So it says that he in NFL he actually never managed to play for a championship team. All his championships in football came when it was still under the American Professional Football Association. He retires from professional football at the age of 41, having played 52 NFL games for 6 teams total, right, between 1920 and 1928. Imagine, like, he wasn't, I mean, 41? Like, again, I'm in my 30s. I can't get out of bed. I keep on saying that, but, like, I'm not kidding.
Was naturally gifted, but he trained a lot too. You can see some pictures, and he would train with a lot of methods that people would, I guess, use, like pulley system weights and things like that. He would
Yeah.
tackle different types of like weighted tackling dummies,
Yep.
and on like a wire, he would chase them. So he knew what to do. Remember, this is a guy who used to study how horses ran to
Yep.
run faster.
Yep. He also, during this time, a lot of biographers did not know this until later on, but during all this, while he's, a professional football and baseball player, he also started playing basketball in like a professional basketball in like a smaller league. And essentially part of his team was the world famous Indians, right? I think it was a traveling
The
basketball team.
world famous Jim Thorpe Indians, yeah.
Yes, that's what it was. It was initially world famous Indians, and then it became Jim Thorpe's world famous
Almost
Indians.
like I think of a Harlem Globetrotters type of thing, where they actually played. It was less like comical, less of
Yeah,
a
yeah, they actually played. Yeah, if you look at his later life, I guess he was kind of hurt by the thing that everyone was. Remember, he stopped playing football in 28 at the age of 41, and then in 29 is the infamous stock market crash in the
the
United States as well
Great
as the
Depression
world.
hits. Yeah.
Yeah, it goes into
So
the Great
yeah, he
Depression.
finds it kind of hard. He struggles to provide for his family because he was so used to working sport related jobs that he could never really hold these non sport related jobs
Hmm.
for a long time. What he does do is he starts to get a job and he starts to become kind of a Hollywood star in a way
Yes.
because he's so popular. So at first he's an extra in a lot of movies. He usually plays. He's being typecasted. He plays an American Indian chief in a lot of westerns.
Hmm.
Um, some other comedies, he plays himself, like a speaking part and things of that nature. He's a kicking coach and he's always like some sort of sports star. And then in 31, he sells the rights to his life story to MGM for
Hmm.
$1,500,
Yeah.
which is about $25,000 today. And then
And I'm pretty sure I also read somewhere that MGM's like boss gave him like a basically like a $2,000 cash bonus, like, hey, thanks for doing that, because they felt bad for him because he really had no money.
Gave him a $2,500 donation, annually, so
Yeah,
he would get it all
yeah,
the time, for him to be, like, the public head of the studio. So, basically, go around, talk up the studio, talk up MGM, "Alright, we'll
yeah.
pay you $2,500 a year to do that." And in the movie that he came out with in 1951, it's called Jim Thorpe All American, starring Burt Lancaster, was a success.
Yeah.
They used a lot of archival footage from the 1912 Olympics, also in the 1932 Olympics, because Thorpe was an assistant coach, in that Olympics.
I didn't know that, really.
Yeah, he was an assistant coach in the 1932 Olympics. So again,
Huh.
he was barred from competing. For his records didn't stand, but he needed money. He needed something. And he did love sports. He loved that competition.
They called him, by the way, around the world. He was known as Man of Bronze.
Yeah, that's what he was, particularly in the United Kingdom, I believe. Yeah.
Yep. I guess that. I mean, I guess that was in reference to his skin color, right? That would be my
Yeah, I
assumption.
think. Yeah. Well, that. Yeah. I mean, again, it wasn't like a nice
Yeah.
look into it.
And then things kind of start turning again. So Great Depression, and he kind of finishes the decade, right? The 30s until the 40s. He works as a construction worker. He's a bouncer and security guard. He digs ditches, and then he does join the United States Merchant Marine, but only for a short period of time. The end of World War II. But the issue here, what really starts to hinder him, is he becomes a chronic alcoholic, right?
DDPs. I saw a lot of. I don't know, man. I saw a lot of conflicting stuff about that. So I heard that I was like, I don't. And then I read a little bit more, and then some more different sources, and what they were saying is that that wasn't true. Like he was known to drink, but there was no real evidence that he drank
That he
excessively.
was like an alcoholic. Okay.
So, I mean, they're saying that was more of it was written. It was written at the time that he did become an alcoholic because that was kind of like the stereotypical what Native American they drink too much type of idea.
Yeah, I could see
Because
that.
Thorpe, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but that's what I saw, and a couple of different things. I was like, I never really heard that before that he was an alcoholic, that he could drink, but just because of an athlete. They said, he was an alcoholic. He never really trained because he didn't train publicly. But everyone who was on a team with him said, no, he was up at the crack of dawn. He would wake you up too, and you had to go train with him. Like he understood that. But a lot of it was he experienced a lot of racism because he was Native American.
Yeah, and it's funny. Now that you say that, it makes absolute sense because he was still competing. Even before that, and they said the first accusations of him drinking started when he was still an athlete, and I highly doubt he would continue being a top athlete if he
Yeah.
drank every single day.
Someone saw him with a beer. Oh, he's drinking all the time. And
Yeah,
they also wrote that he lived in a trailer on his life, and that's true. He did live in a trailer, but that was his that was like his what number wife
third
was that?
wife. It was his
His
third
wife.
wife.
They wanted to live in a trailer. They lived in a trailer
Yeah,
because they traveled all the time. They traveled around the country.
yeah,
He was an outdoorsman. He wanted to hunt and fish and do all that stuff outdoors. That's why they lived in a trailer. Yeah,
yeah,
did he have the type of money that an athlete like him would have today? Nowhere close. If he was an
yeah,
athlete in today's standards, his endorsements and what he could do, his contracts, forget about it. Like
yeah,
just forget it. He'd be the highest paid athlete. Forget about Jordan, LeBron, and it would be Jim Thorpe. But because of when he was and the racism he experienced, but a lot of stuff came. There was a lot of like myths written about him, like, oh look, he's just this Indian, gets drunk, lives in a trailer. He wasn't a drunk. He did live in a trailer, but he chose to live in a trailer because he
yeah,
was driving around the country hunting and fishing, and he always wanted to do that. He was an outdoorsman, and that's something he did up until his last days of life. He basically did that.
yeah. And talk about last days of life. He contracted. Well, he got lip cancer, right, in 1950, and it became a charity case apparently because he literally had no money for the procedure. So, um, and they said it was a little bit of that was his third wife was kind of just playing up the whole, hey, give us money, because she kind of wanted him to continue to make money, and he was kind of done with this whole the fame aspect, but she really wanted the fame. So she went and had his big press conference, and he's like, he's got cancer. We need money, please. We're broke, blah blah blah. But they said he wasn't necessarily broke per se, but he
Yeah,
he did
like
pass.
he was getting money. He was making public appearances and
Yeah,
speeches. He was still a famous icon. People knew who he was. His name had value. He had value as that. Could he make the type of money that he probably could have made? No. And one reason was because he didn't care. He wanted to be an outdoorsman. He's like, I did my sport stuff. I enjoyed that. Now I just want to travel. He had the money to do that and be an
that was that.
outdoorsman, hunt and fish, and that was really what he wanted
Yeah.
to do. That was
And
it.
so in early 1953 is when he essentially has heart failure, right? Um, they said it was the third time he was having like a heart attack, and this time around they briefly revive him, but so they say he speaks a couple words, but then he kind of loses consciousness and he dies from this heart failure on March 28th at the age of 65, March 28th of 1953.
But that's not the
There's
end of
Jim
his.
Thorpe.
That's not the end of his
No,
story, though. You
no.
want
So let's talk about some of the legacy aspect.
Well, before we get to the legacy, we could there's controversy just with his body,
Oh,
right?
this body, huge. Well,
Yeah.
because his wife technically steals the body.
Patricia, his wife Patricia,
Yeah.
wants to be buried in Oklahoma. That's where he was
Yes.
born. That's where he lived his early lives. But she wants Oklahoma. She wants the state officials to essentially build him a monument.
Hmm.
And they say we're not going to do that. They say no, we're not doing that. So
Yeah.
she essentially auctions off his remains.
Yeah.
And there's two small towns in Pennsylvania, Mockchuck and East Mockchuck,
Yeah.
and they say, listen, there's about 5,000 people total, right?
Yeah. In both
Um,
towns.
in both towns. We'll merge our towns together, call ourselves Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, and we'll build a monument, a mausoleum to hold his remains. And she agrees. And
Yeah.
about a year after he dies, that's where his remains are moved to. And they expected it to be like this major tourist attraction. It didn't really turn out that way.
Yeah.
And his first wives and his other children were really upset about this, and they didn't like the fact that their dad's body was auctioned off, and they wanted him, buried in Oklahoma. And they actually sued to get the body back, his descendants, in 2010, and they
Yeah.
won, but it was overturned in 2014, and the remains are still there in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, which is, it's right across the border. It's a small town. I don't know if you've ever been there, Pete, or not.
Well, what's interesting? Jim Thorpe was never there.
Well, that's the thing I was going to say. Yeah, he was never there,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Yeah.
they tell you that too. That's it. They
Yeah.
they tell you that in there in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. I remember I used to always go whitewater rafting there. They have a lot of whitewater rafting, paintball courses, and I would go there when I was younger. And you get on the bus, and it would be like, I guess, like the guy from the rafting place as you're driving to the rapids would give you like kind of a background on Jim Thorpe, like a little history lesson. And he's been like, a lot of people think he was born here. That's what they feel now, but he was never born here, and he never even set foot once in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. But here,
Crazy.
that's where his remains are buried. They have a big statue to him and stuff like that. They're like, well, Oklahoma didn't want to honor him. We'll honor him. And some people in Oklahoma did want to honor him. There was outrage when
Yeah.
they.
The governor said he's not because they needed like $25,000 or something for the monument, and the governor's like, "Yeah, we're not spending taxpayers' money on that." So the wife's like, "Oh yeah, boom,
Yeah, I'll go to New Jersey. I'll go to Pennsylvania. We'll put it
yeah."
there. Like, wait, he was
Um,
never there. It doesn't matter. They're paying me for it. So
Yeah, which is insane. So yeah, the case actually made it to the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court refused to hear the matter. This was in 2015. You know what? We should go to Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. I kind of want to check this
it's
out
not
now.
far. Yeah, we'll go. Small town.
Let's do this. So let's talk about some of his honors. You want to kind of talk about some of the honors? Like, I mean, he got a lot of them post death, right?
Yeah, there's
Besides, obviously, named a town named after him.
There's a town named after him. I saw that even recently, as July 2020, there's actually a petition to get a film made about Thorpe, and it's also calling upon the IOC to reinstate Thorpe as a sole winner in a lot of the events in 1912. He got his medals back,
Hmm.
but the other people are still listed as winners in those
Yep.
events,
Yep.
and they're saying no, that has to be overturned. That you actually have to he should be the sole winner of every event that he won in the 1912 Olympics. So that was one thing that they're talking about. I remember in the turn of the century in 1999, the Associated Press placed him third on the top athletes of the century,
Hmm.
right behind Babe Ruth and Michael Jordan. And I understand that for popularity, like Babe Ruth and Michael Jordan, but I don't know if even they would probably say Thorpe was a better athlete. I think there is proof that Ruth actually said that at times when they said, "You're
Yeah.
the greatest athlete of all time." He's like I'm a good baseball player. I think he says that in one of his interviews or something, that Jim Thorpe, that
Yeah.
he is actually the greatest athlete he's ever known. They weren't around, they were alive at the same time. They were
Yeah.
aware of one another.
Yeah. I mean, ESPN, right? It says ranked him seventh on the list of the best North American athletes of a century of all time, I guess. But I'm curious who the first, if he's seventh, who the first six are. I mean, if we're talking about the best North American athletes,
The first one was Jordan and Ruth.
but
Jordan and Ruth.
again, like you said, I mean, Jordan dabbled a little bit in baseball, but this is, I mean, it comes but when it comes to athletics, again,
and accomplishments into those sports. Not like he just participated in them, right? He
yeah,
won them. He won them.
yeah. Oh, the
So he
gold
was
medal.
inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1963. He's also in the College Football Hall of Fame. So he's a lot of those things. President Richard Nixon authorizes a proclamation April 16th, 1973 as Jim Thorpe Day, right, to recognize what he
Yeah,
did. Again, years after his death.
yeah.
They put stamps on him, all right. They celebrate, Jim
Isn't there like
Thorpe.
a Jim Thorpe Award or something? It's a college
It's
football award.
given to the best defensive back in college football every year. Yeah, there's also the Thorpe Cup, which is also given to one of the best athletes in college, like overall athletes. It's named after him.
He was on a dollar coin, I'm pretty sure. It was, but it was like he shared it with somebody. It wasn't like Sacagawea on one
Sacagawea
side.
was on it. Yeah, it was featured in 2018,
Yeah,
and he was on one side, and the other side was Sacagawea. Yeah.
yeah. I actually talked about Sacagawea today in class. I was doing Lewis and Clark. I was kind of checking if they were paying attention today on Zoom, my students. So I was like, so Lewis and Clark and Pocahontas, they when they said out west, and I stopped and I was waiting, and not
Nothing.
a single person, not a single person corrected me. And I was like, oh my God, like I'm a failure. What is happening? So I was like, everyone unmute right now. I'm like, what did I say? And they're like, Lewis and Clark. And I'm like, Sacagawea, guys, Sacagawea. All right. Come on. Come on. Not Pocahontas. Anyway, sorry. I had to go. Teaching.
A little bit of a rant there, but fair enough.
Well, I mean, history teachers talking, right? We are history teachers. We did teach history today. You taught history this morning. I taught history this morning. We taught history. Anyway, so what are some fun stuff about? What are some things we might have missed about Jim Thorpe? I think we got most of these cool
Well, we were
things.
talking a lot about him, but obviously, when we decided to do this, we were actually really excited just because of what he, accomplished, and I think he was just. I don't know how much people really know about him now. You
That's
know,
the problem. I don't think people really know about Jim Thorpe.
like I do remember my dad talking about Jim Thorpe when I was younger. He'd be like, "Oh no," he's like, "These guys." He's like the best athlete of all time was Jim Thorpe. I remember my dad. I remember my dad saying that
Yeah.
to me when I was younger, and that's how kind of I became kind of like aware of him. And then obviously when I would go to Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, for those rafting trips, I became somewhat aware of it. But yeah, just the things that he was able to do, like I just in awe of like if he was alive today, how huge he would be. And he was a very humble person too.
Yeah, they
Like
said he was extremely humble.
he
Yeah.
came back in 1912 Olympics and everyone's cheering and saying, chanting his name. He's like, I didn't know. His quote was, "I didn't know a fella could have so many friends."
Yeah. Nuts.
Like, he was just like, but he did have gum. He was one of the first athletes to have gum named after him. It was his Jim Thorpe Sports King gum.
Yeah.
So he was put on those sorts of things. So
I
he
just
was
saw that signed wrapper for that gum for like $1,000 on eBay.
of what Jim Thorpe.
Yeah.
Pretty high, right?
Right. All right. Well, so that's Jim Thorpe. How did we come up with this topic again? I think you were the one. You're like, hey, why don't we do Jim Thorpe? And I was like, oh. Anyway, all right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in again. And please do not forget to subscribe wherever you do listen to this podcast. It does make it much easier for others to find our podcast. If
Give us some
you have
feedback. Let us know what you
follow.
think or
Yep.
any topics you might want us to try to explore or tackle in the future. We appreciate that.
Yep, absolutely. So thank you so much, guys. And until next week, enjoy.
Stay safe.
I hope everyone enjoyed our podcast. And if you would like to email us, you can do so at historyteacherspodcast@gmail.com.